Someone left a comment on one of my videos last week saying, what makes you a historian? And once I explained, they deleted their comment. So I think they were maybe being a bit incredulous or annoyed at me or something. I don't know. Anyway, I studied history at university and I make these videos. This is one of the videos I make. Like, I am a professional. I get paid for this content. I get paid to write about history. That makes me a historian. Anyway, this video is about Banjo Paterson, right? It's continuing my series on the people on the money. He's on a $10 bill. You've definitely seen his face before. The $10 note here in Australia has Banjo Paterson on it. I'm going to tell you a story about him. I'm going to tell you a story about his life right now, right? And if you haven't seen one of these videos before, I'd love it if you could scroll through the playlist that it's in. My history playlist, my Australian history playlist. I've done the 50, the 20, I'm now doing the 10. I did the 100 as well before I did the 50. I'll do the 5 after the 10. I probably won't do the 5 because that just has the Queen of England on it. Anyway, point being, I have spent the last few days since that person wrote that comment writing a script. I'm going to read the script to you now, and to save me going like and looking silly, you're going to see a bunch of Australian native animals from this point, but you will hear my voice as I read the script. If you like this video, do me a solid and hit like on this video, hit subscribe. Both of those things really, really help me, right? This is my job. This is my income. As I said, I'm a historian. It's not exactly a baller type career, you know what I mean? I'm not going to be fighting LeBron James for a seat at the fucking art gallery or whatever. Like, I'd love any extra money I could get. Do me a solid, hit like, hit subscribe. Google's ad revenue will help me out. Failing that, consider joining these guys as a YouTube member or a Patreon patron. There's all sorts of ways to give me money. I like money. Turning some of yours into mine on a monthly basis would be ideal, but failing that, turning some of Google's into mine would be great. Anyway, Banjo Paterson, really interesting dude, really fascinating guy, poet from the early days of Australia. I'm going to tell you more about him now. Let's get into it.
Banjo Paterson is one of those rare Australians whose work didn't just entertain people, it actually shaped how the country thinks and talks about itself. When we picture the bush, or imagine a stockman galloping down a steep ridge, or hear the opening lines of Waltzing Matilda, we're moving through ideas that Banjo put into words more than a century ago. He captured something about this place that people instantly recognised, and that's the main reason he ended up on our $10 note. He was born on the 17th of February 1864 at a place called Narambla, near Orange in New South Wales. His parents, Andrew and Rose Paterson, were grazier types, practical, hard-working, used to long distances and long hours. Banjo spent his early years around the Yass district. Back then it was a genuine bush country, dry, open, unforgiving at times, and full of all the sorts of characters he'd later write about. Those early experiences stuck with him. The horses, the heat, the dust, the attitudes, all of it stayed in the back of his mind while he went off to school and eventually into the city. At around 10 years old, he moved to Sydney and boarded with his grandmother while attending Sydney Grammar. He wasn't a tortured genius or anything like that. He did well, learned quickly, and showed he could apply himself. After school, he became a law clerk and eventually a fully qualified solicitor by 1886. That was his day job, the respectable professional career. But even while working in law, he was writing poetry in the evenings and sending it in to the Bulletin, which was the beating heart of Australian writing at the time. He didn't publish under his real name, though. He picked the pen name The Banjo, taken from one of his family horses. It was a small choice that ended up defining his public identity. And honestly, Banjo Paterson just sounds like he was born to write ballads, if you ask me. It didn't take long for his poems to get noticed. In 1889, he published Clancy of the Overflow, which expressed a feeling that still resonates today. The city grind versus the freedom of the bush. Even readers who'd never ridden a horse or seen open country connected with it. It had that hopeful tone, that sense of escape. It captured an idea that people wanted to believe in. Then, in 1890, came the poem that really cemented his place in Australian culture, The Man from Snowy River. This one absolutely took off. It's a story of courage, horsemanship, but it isn't told with bravado. It's told with quiet admiration. A young, unnamed writer takes on a challenge no one else is willing to face, and he does it without showing off. The rhythm of the lines imitates galloping hooves, the pace builds naturally, and the story doesn't need any extra decoration to make it memorable. Australians loved it. The poem spread quickly, and Banjo went from that solicitor who writes poems to a household name. Around this time, Banjo got into a friendly rivalry with Henry Lawson. Lawson had grown up in tougher circumstances and had a darker view of the bush. He wrote about isolation, poverty, and hardship. Banjo wrote about resilience, skill, and good humour. Lawson accused him of romanticising the bush, whereas Banjo argued Lawson was far too bleak. Their back and forth, called the Bulletin Debate, gave Australia two important lenses for viewing itself. On one side, Lawson's realism. On the other side, Paterson's optimism. Both were part of the national character, and their debate helped people to see that clearly. In 1895, Angus and Robertson published Banjo's first book, The Man from Snowy River and Other Verses. It was an immediate success, going through multiple editions in only a few months. That kind of popularity for poetry was almost unheard of, and it showed just how deeply Australians connected with his writing. He wasn't writing for elite literary circles. He was writing for ordinary people, and ordinary people are the ones who responded. That same year, he wrote the words to Waltzing Matilda. He was up in Queensland visiting Dagworth Station near Wilton, where his fiancée Sarah Riley was staying. Winton, not Wilton. Sorry, I read that wrong. Their friend Christina McPherson played him a tune she remembered from the Warrnambool races, derived from an older Scottish song called Craigie Lee. Banjo heard the tune and started crafting lyrics. The story he told, a wandering worker who steals a sheep and gets cornered, chooses death rather than surrender, was both tragic and strangely uplifting. The chorus gave the whole thing a bouncy, cheeky energy that stuck with people. It spread quickly across Queensland, then across the country, and in 1903, the version arranged by Mary Cowan for a Billy T advertising campaign became the form we still sing today. It's not the national anthem, but in terms of cultural recognition, it might as well be. Banjo's words helped create the song that many people around the world instantly associate with Australia. By the late 1890s, Banjo had become one of Australia's leading writers, but he didn't just sit in an office. In 1899, he went to South Africa as a war correspondent during the Boer War, working for the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. He embedded himself with troops, observed battles, and filed reports from places like Kimberley, Bloemfontein, and Pretoria. His writing was clear, descriptive, and grounded. Not sensational, but not dry either. It reinforced the idea that he had a strong grasp of people and events, not just rhyme and rhythm. In 1901, he travelled to China, intending to report on the Boxer Rebellion, but the fighting had already ended. Back in Australia, he took up editorial roles at the Evening News and later in the Town and Country Journal. He continued writing poetry and short stories throughout these years, building a career that blended creativity with public engagement. Then, in 1914, the First World War began. Banjo was 50, which was too old for frontline combat, but he refused to sit the war out. He first served as an ambulance driver in France. Later, he returned to Australia, joined the Australian Imperial Force, and became an officer in the 2nd Remount Unit, the unit responsible for training horses for the mounted forces operating in Egypt and the Middle East. Given his lifelong experience with horses, it was a role he handled extremely well. He rose to the rank of Major, served until 1919, and even after being injured in 1916, he went back to work as soon as he'd recovered. During the war, he continued to write. One of his pieces, We're All Australians Now, captured the feeling of national unity that emerged as the Anzac legend took shape. It had the same tone he used in his earlier works: proud, hopeful, and sincere. After the war, he returned home and continued contributing to public life. He wrote articles, stories, radio scripts, and commentary. In 1923, he published the collected verse of A.B. Paterson, which helped keep his earlier poems in circulation. By the 1930s, he was widely recognised as one of Australia's most important writers. Schools taught his poems, newspapers quoted them, and readers held on to them with real affection. In 1939, he was appointed a Commander of the Order of the British Empire for his services to literature. He died in Sydney in 1941 at the age of 76. Newspapers printed his work in tribute, proof that even by then his writing had become part of Australia's shared memory. Banjo's place on the $10 note wasn't an accident. When Australia switched to polymer banknotes in the early 1990s, each note was designed around a theme. The $10 note was dedicated to Australian literature, and the Reserve Bank chose Banjo Paterson for one side and Dame Mary Gilmore for the other. The first polymer version came out on the 1st of November 1993. When the entire series was updated in 2017, both writers were kept. The artwork includes a mounted horseman silhouette, a pen nib, the sulphur-crested cockatoo, and acacia bramble wattle. Fine microprint on the note represents or reproduces lines from The Man from Snowy River Everything on the note ties directly back to Banjo's life, themes, and the words that he brought into the national imagination. There are a few moments in Banjo's life that really explain why he became so central to the country's identity. The debate with Henry Lawson showed Australians two sides of themselves, hard realism versus hopeful resilience. The writing of Waltzing Matilda demonstrated Banjo's ability to take a small, focal moment and turn it into something that resonates across generations. His Boer War reporting showed he could describe real events with clarity, empathy, and strength. And his military service in the Remount unit showed that the man who wrote about horses actually lived and worked among them in some of the toughest circumstances possible. His enduring influence comes from the tone of his writing, direct, warm, humorous, and grounded. He never tried to be lofty or inaccessible. He wrote about the world he knew in a way that ordinary people would connect with. He celebrated the best parts of Australian life without ignoring the difficulties. That balance feels honest, and honesty tends to last. More than 100 years later, his poems still appear in classrooms, community events, and national ceremonies. His characters are still recognised, his lines are still quoted, his rhythm is still imitated. A huge amount of people consider classic Australian identity, independence, humour, a sense of fairness, courage without arrogance, was reinforced or shaped, in fact, by his writing. Banjo Paterson earned his place on the $10 note because he helped Australians understand themselves. He gave voice to people and places that had rarely been written about. He captured the sound of the country before it truly realised what it actually sounded like. And he did it consistently across poems, journalism, war service, and public life. That's why his legacy has lasted, and that's why every time someone hands over a $10 note, they're holding a little piece of the voice he gave this country. Steady, proud, and unmistakably Australian.
Sorry, I fumbled my words or misspoke a couple of times there. I tried to do it all in one take because my kids are here. It's just me and my kids, and I needed to get it done, right? I've been sitting on this for a few days. So if you like Banjo Paterson, I've got another video coming soon about Mary Gilmore. I'm working on the script as we speak. And if you want to check this playlist out, like the education and history playlist, I've got videos on the people on the 100, the people on the 50, the people on the 20, and now I'm halfway through the people on the 10, right? So check out my education and history playlist. Do me a solid, otherwise my university education is wasted. And yeah. Consider giving me money. These guys give me money on a monthly basis. I'd love to get some money from you on a monthly basis. Don't feel like you have to. If you're watching this video at this point, then you've probably already seen a couple of ads, or you're on YouTube Premium, both of which result in me getting money anyway. But if you wanted to give me $1 a month, just directly, that'd be handy. I'd appreciate it. There's links on how to do that in the description. Failing that, I'll see you guys when I look at you. You'll see me when you look at me. Thanks so much for watching. Do me a solid. Watch some more. See ya.